Hey, welcome everyone to the Architect Marketing Institute live stream masterclass. My name is Eric Bobrow. I'm co-founder of AMI, along with my esteemed partner, Richard Petrie. How are you doing, Richard?
Doing well, Eric. Yeah. Looking forward to today's session.
Oh, I see. Okay. So we're getting echo because I'm going to have to turn off the other. Okay. So we got a little echo because there's a delay in it going out live to the other platforms, and I had them open. So anyway, we are live. Let us know that you can hear us. I see Sue has just typed in a comment. She's on our team. She's on the YouTube live area. If you're on Facebook and you're seeing us, please type in. Richard, do you have your screen? You want to share your screen? And we have, in order to give Facebook give permission for us to see the comments from Facebook, you need to go to Facebook. Let's see, is it StreamYard.com? I have this here. I gave that to you, Richard. The link. What is it? Sorry, this is the first time. StreamYard.com/Facebook. So StreamYard.com/Facebook. That will give permission for StreamYard for us to see that. Okay, and I do see Clara from Johannesburg, and Sienna, Emmanuel Garcia. Okay, welcome. And from LinkedIn. Okay, so excellent. So, hey, this is exciting. We've never done this before. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We have something very special today. Richard's going to go over the topic of niche specialization and why it is so useful, so helpful to get you to a position where you have a strong advantage in the market, where people will say, you're the go-to person or the go-to firm, and where you can actually earn a higher fee and not have to work as hard, particularly not have to work as hard to win the projects because you're in such a strong position. So Richard, tell us what we're going to have today in the next 20, 30 minutes.
Well, I'll just get straight into it, Eric. So we've only got 30 minutes, so I'll just get straight to the presentation. All right. So look, as Eric said, look, when you try and be all things to all people, you end up being nothing to no one. And it's not entirely true, but there is this thing about being a generalist. Now, what we want to do, here's the problem. Let's say that you've got a client who wants an X design, and your reply probably is, yeah, I can do X. And then you get another client who says, I want to do a Y design, and you go, yeah, I can do Y too. And then along comes another project where they say, I want to do Z, and you go, yeah, I can do Z as well, right? You can do everything. You're fully within your rights to call yourself a generalist or someone who's an expert in a number of different genres, okay? Because you've earned the right? But while you may see this as a competitive advantage, the fact that you are so versatile, unfortunately, your marketing doesn't see it as an advantage, right? Now, you've probably heard of the term jack of all trades. So what's the end of that sentence? Just type it in. What's the end of jack of all trades sentence? If someone could just type it in. Let's have a look. Jack of all trades, master of none, right? And that's the problem. That is the problem with being a bit of a generalist. So while you see your multi-skilled abilities as your greatest asset, unfortunately, your marketing doesn't work that way, right? The market can often see you as a bit of a generalist handyman. That's how perceptions work. So your apprenticeship and toil and sweat and tears in 20 different areas is not it may be a design advantage, but it's not a marketing advantage, right? So being a specialist often is, right? And what we're looking to do is you need to make yourself a specialist, because if you get seen as just another architect, then if you're just an architect who can do a whole lot of things and so are other people, then you're replaceable. And when you're replaceable, it's quite reasonable. If I can buy 5 different cars and they're all kind of the same, then I'm probably going to go for the cheapest one, right? So you get your fees questioned. Your process often gets questioned. The client will come in and start telling you how they want things done. They'll put their hands on the steering wheel, and it doesn't work too well. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a specialist in your entire business. What I'm saying is your marketing needs to be specialist. Now, this is really important, right? You don't need to be a specialist necessarily in everything, but your marketing needs to communicate a specialist marketing message. Okay. And the reason, and so if we're talking about, okay, if that's a generalist, what we need you to do for you to win those really good projects is you need to find a way to make yourself special. Okay. And when you're special, you're scarce. There's not many of you, right? And when you're scarce, you can charge higher fees. Your process is not questioned. They tend to do things your way, right? If I go to a heart surgeon or something like that, I don't start telling the heart surgeon how to do the operation, right? I'm kind of in his or her loving hands. And if I started trying to tell the heart surgeon how I wanted it done, because I'd done some research on Google, they refuse to operate on me. It's their way or the highway. And if you're special and there's not many of you, and you're talking about something which is in reasonable demand, then you can form a waiting list. Okay, so it's kind of obvious. If you're seen as a generalist, there's a lot of bad things. If you're seen as a specialist, you're going to attract particularly the higher end of the market, right? And think about when you're looking for things. If you've got a heart problem, you'll want to see a heart specialist, not the GP. If Tiger Woods has a problem with his swing, he'll go to Butch Harmon, the swing coach. In rugby, the All Blacks have a specialist scrum coach. In the NFL, there'll be a special kicking coach, and there'll be one player in the team who just kicks. That's all he does. How tedious, right? But he's a specialist, and he's probably paid millions, right? So that's the whole thing. We see someone as a specialist. When we look at someone who's a specialist, the perception is we see someone who's done it before, who maybe has the networks, who knows how to overcome the problems that someone's likely to have in my niche. And there was a saying, IBM, when they used to sell their software, the saying was no one got fired for buying IBM. And it was kind of like they're the specialists. They're the low risk option. And specialists are seen as kind of low risk options. All right. Now, just if you can type in the chat window, I'd just be interested to know how many people here would consider themselves a specialist. Just and type in the niche that you would consider yourself a specialist in, if you are. Okay. Now, I know not everybody can type in depending on what platform you're on, but for those of you who are on the StreamYard, I suppose, if anyone can type in there, and I'll come back to those a bit later on. Okay. So let's have a look at what we can do. Now, there are 3 strategies. I'm going to teach you one of them today. All right. So we're going to talk about being a specialist. Now, just to give you context here, what I do is I teach a complete, it's sort of an end-to-end marketing system where there are 9 different steps. And what we're going to go through today really is step number 2. We're going to, summarize step number 2. And step number 2 is around being a specialist, right? It's about being someone who's special. So there are 3 different strategies that we can deploy, at least in this one. We're going to look at being a specialist. Now, let's just have a quick look at the structure of how people see how people see it. It's called the power pyramid, right? And this power pyramid is, it indicates the level of power that different people have at various stages. So at the very bottom of the power pyramid would be someone who is a salesperson. And when you're in sales mode, you don't really wield a lot of power, right? And then the generalist would be above that in terms of power. And then above the generalist is the specialist. And then the authority or the expert figure is above that. And then the celebrity architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, Frank Gehry, all the star architects might fit right at the top. Now, you're not probably going to turn yourself into a star architect, but at the very least, you can turn yourself into a specialist. Now, the benefits, I've gone through some of the benefits of being a specialist. You earn higher fees, right? Now, if you're an expert, you would earn higher fees than a specialist. But at least today, we can talk about this thing about being a specialist. So let's have a look at the process of specialization. Okay. Now, there are two things I reckon I want you to consider when you're looking at specialization, right? You can look at specialization from a project category, which is kind of the obvious one that most people go to, but you should also look at it from a point of view of you could specialize in a particular type of client, right? Now, probably the best thing is you pick a project category and you pick a project type, and you kind of look for something which is at the intersection of the two. So we'll go through both of them, and then I'll give you some examples at the end, and then we'll take it from there. Now, by the way, if you want, there's a document which really outlines actually 5 different niching strategies, and if you want a copy of that document, I believe, type in wherever you are, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or on the stream here, type in special. Just type the word special into the chat window. We'll pick that up and we'll send you a document which kind of summarizes what I'm talking about today, but gives you a number of other strategies as well. This is the simplest of the strategies, right? There are cleverer ones and more effective ones, but this is the easiest one to teach in half an hour. All right, let's have a look at project categories. All right, now, you might look here and say, all right, well, there's a whole lot of different categories: residential, industrial. What are you? I specialize in residential. I specialize in industrial. I specialize in public. Okay, yeah, that is one level of specialization, but it's very broad. All right. So what I would encourage you to do is break that down. Okay. So, because even if you say I specialize in residential or high-end residential, even that is still very broad, right? So you could break it down another level. Okay. So let's have a look at some of these. I won't go through all of them, but you could break down by service level. So I do high-end residential and I do full end-to-end. Right, I work with busy people who are doing high-end residential, and I, full service, right? So if you don't have time, you're a rich New York banker or something like that, and you need someone to run the whole process, just occasionally show them, do you want this or this? Boom, that's what I do. Okay, so there could be service levels. You could specialize, let's say, in residential based on a method that you use. Right, I'm a passive house residential. Now, once again, there's a few of those, or I do biophilic or feng shui, or you could make up your own proprietary method. Okay, we've got a lot of members who have created their own method, and one of the things they specialize in is in doing this particular type of approach to design. So Bob Burnett, based in Christchurch in New Zealand, does super homes. So, specialize in residential, but not just any residential. They build super homes, which is their own proprietary standard, bit like a passive house, but not quite as rigid on some of the aspects, right? But they've created your own particular method. Or You could specialize in budgets. I specialize in doing properties between $3 and $10 million budgets. Okay. Now, the benefit of being more specific and breaking these things down is that you can make yourself more valuable. Let's say you specialize in 3 to 10. Well, they have a different set of problems, I guess. While most of the stuff they do will be the same, there will be some things that are a bit different. And even if you think they're 90% the same as any other project, they don't. If they're doing they've got a $7 million budget, they think that their home is going to be different to what most people are used to doing. They're going to have their own specific needs. And that's the thing about marketing. Everyone thinks they're different, right? So when you say, I specialize in beachfront homes with people who are looking with a construction budget of 3 to 10 million, that stands out to someone in that zone, right? And you can, they probably do have a few unique differences that might be a bit different. The type of materials they're using, or the experts that you need to call in, maybe to set up their IT infrastructure or something like that. They might have some differences, and you want to play on those differences. That I'm well versed in dealing with. I've got the networks for the people who set up, high tech installations in, $3 to $10 million homes. I know the right people. I know how to incorporate it into the design. Who knows what it is? Okay, so it could be location, beachfront, inner city. Could be based on purpose, right? Aging in place. You can break it down. Let's have a quick look at, there was an interesting one here with commercial. Okay, so you can see here there's all sorts of different commercial ones. And these are probably pretty obvious, but I was speaking to one guy here and he said, yep, I do commercial. And I said, all right, well, commercial's pretty broad. Can you break that down? And he broke down a number. And I said, all these options you've given me, which one is often the best for you? And he said, well, medical centers. I really like medical centers. I said, all right, can we break that down again? Because there are medical centers. Are there any particular medical centers which are really profitable for you, or where the client or the project, you really enjoy doing it and you really enjoy working with them? And he said, yeah, actually, of all the ones I've done, oncology, right? I said, well, why oncology? And here we go. Well, they have special needs they have special needs. They've got unique problems that maybe some of the other medical centers don't. They need specialist equipment, specialist rooms. The oncology is one of those areas where they are in demand. Their services are in demand. There's probably not enough of them. They can charge high fees. They make a lot of money. So therefore, if it comes to spending money on design or on construction for an oncology medical center, there is less resistance, right? They're making good money. And we talked about making him the go-to guy for not just medical centers, but oncology medical centers, right? Now, if you get a reputation as being known as the guy or the gal who specialize in doing oncology centers, then anyone with one is going to kind of seek you out and want to have a chat with you, as opposed to someone who, oh yes, I specialize in commercial. Well, that's not going to get attention. Even someone who said, yeah, I mean, you probably would get attention if you said, I specialize in medical centers, but I specialize in oncology medical centers. Boom. You see the difference? Right? And same with us. Like, we're marketers, right? We don't teach. I used to teach everybody to win business. Now I work with Eric, and we focus on architects, interior designers, and we specialize. And so there's a perception, and rightly so, that we're better because it's all we do. Same with the oncology guy. Okay. Now, in terms of when you're analyzing these different options, and what I would suggest you would do is you might be a commercial architect or you might be a residential, and you might pick a number of different ways I could carve myself down. Okay. So I would expect you to come up with, let's say, 5 or 6 different options of where you might look to create a niche within your business. And even if you're a generalist business, that's fine, but we want to create a niche area and a niche marketing system for that area. Okay. Now, what you're going to need to do then, let's say you come up with 5 different options, you then want to do some sort of analysis. Okay, so you'd put your different options in here. And in fact, if you type template into the chat window, wherever you're listening to this cast, then we'll send you a copy of this. So what you would do is you would put each of your different possible niches in here, and then you would rate them out of 10, right? So the first one would be urgency. How urgent is it for them to get these things built? You know, how urgent are they to get the project forward? And you just give it a mark out of 10. So oncology labs, okay, let's say, yeah, it's reasonably urgent for most of the people looking to build oncology labs. It's not something they sit on for 5 years. Okay, great. So you might give it a 7. Do they have expensive problems, or do they have a lot to gain? You might say, well, yeah, these places are making a fair amount of money. So they are making a fair amount of money. They have a lot to gain if they get their lab up or their medical clinic up. So I'm going to give that a 9. Do you have some sort of advantage? Right? Well, if you position yourself as a specialist and you've done some of these oncology labs and you had some inside knowledge, you could say yes and give yourself a higher marking. So you go through these different aspects here, you give yourself a mark, you can fill it out, and you can kind of visually see if you rate it, let's say it was urgency was 10, you'd have a dot up here, and you'd go right around the whole circle. You'd be able to see how big this wheel is. For each of the different niches. So you might choose 5 different niches, you rate them all, and then that might help you come up with an idea as to which one of the 5 different options you've got, as to which one would be the best one to choose. Okay, so type in template, and we'll give you a copy of that if you'd like a copy of that. Okay, let's have a quick look at so as you can see, a lot of this stuff here, the mistake people make is they're just too broad, right? It's about drilling down. It's about going down to a deeper level of granular detail on a niche. You don't want to go too narrow that, there's such a small number of people looking for it, but it needs to be narrow enough that there's not many other people competing in that area. So, our oncology labs would probably be a really good one, because most of the people in that area are probably just doing medical labs or commercial. Okay, let's have a quick look at client type, and I'm going to jump straight to, there's a number of ways you could assess the clients. Okay, so let's say I picked oncology labs, or let's say I'm doing a residential one. I'm doing high-end residential, and I have a particular way I want to do it. And now I want to get specific about it's not just about the perfect project. It's who do I want as clients? Now, here's an example of a guy in one of our programs, and he broke it down. We created an avatar, and an avatar is kind of a description of the perfect person. Okay, so for Peter, he wants $1 million plus budget. They are very selective about who they choose. He doesn't want someone who just wants any architect. He wants a picky person. He says, I want them to have sometimes even spoken to 2 or 3 architects and being too difficult. He likes them being difficult because he wants them to be picky and very particular about what they're after. That he's after those type of people. They usually drive a European car. Okay, they appreciate art and great design. They value Peter's talents. Now, often they value his talents because they've either read about him or he's been referred, right? Ideally, they have been referred. He has good rapport with them. They are devoted to the design of their home. Okay, almost other architects might find them annoying, right? And he asks a series of questions to find that out. It needs to be a portfolio worthy home or project for him, portfolio worthy. And they understand they're impacted by the living environment. One's artsy, the other one's accountant. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly this type of person, but when you've got an outline like this, then it's pretty handy, right? It's pretty handy because when you see them, bang, you go, man, that is one of my discerning design clients that I was after, right? And they're doing the type of project. Okay, so we've looked at breaking down project categories, and in particular, we looked at say, breaking it right down to a smaller type of category that is somewhere you could specialize, somewhere which would be highly profitable and something you'd want to work on, but not so small that it is too small that there's not a big enough market for you. We've looked at clients. Let's have a look at a couple of other examples just to finish this off. Julia. Okay, so Julia was doing she was doing just residential homes in Brooklyn. We niched it down, and she said, okay, brownstone homes. Okay, and then it got niched down again to people looking to do basement conversions in their brownstone homes. Right, now the reason she picked that up is because whenever you do a conversion of a basement, according to her, it adds a lot of value to the property. All right, and by adding a lot of value to the property, it was easy to justify spending a bit more money. You could convert it into another residence or a bigger house, but it made the house worth a lot more. So that was a really good niche for her. We got David here, who he was doing resilient homes. So these are these people who want to get off the grid, and they want to get off the grid. And he started out, he knew he had a niche, right? And he said, I want to do resilient homes, those off the grid. And when we talked about it, I said, well, what makes you special? What makes you more valuable for these type of people? And he said, well, off the grid, our homes are structurally stout. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he broke it down. We can cover weather, ICF, walls, quakes, hurricanes, wildfires. We have safe areas, multi-generational. Now, the key thing here was what I said, what makes you special? And is around, we can make these homes much more structurally stout, right? Because a lot of these homes, even resilient homes, he said, he used the term, they're like matchstick homes. So we build to cover all these things. They're way more structurally stout than a normal resilient home. And what was the other value? He says, I have a team. We have an electrical guy, energy modeling guy. I think this should be something else. So I have a whole team of people. And I said, it sounds like what you're doing here is not just resilient. Why don't we call it ultra resilient? Okay, so even within the resilient market, we could, if we broke that down, we'd kind of say, there's 80% who just want a resilient home, but 20% of them, if they knew that there was an ultra resilient option and it was at the top end of the market, that would be really appealing to the top 20% of the market, those who want an ultra resilient home. Okay, so sometimes even just picking a niche and then saying, all right, well, what would be the top 20% of that niche? And then you say, I specialize in that, not the niche, but the top 20% of that particular niche. Right. We're going to stop there and we're going to cover any questions that people have. So if you've got any questions, then now would be a really good time to type them in. Templates. A few people asked for templates. Ross Can. Hey, Ross Can. Right.
There's a question from Clara Cruz Almeida from, I think she's from South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it Spain? I can't remember now.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Can't there be a niche for making CAC houses become super homes? There's so much CAC in architecture. So taking something that people, I guess, when I interpret CAC as like, it's just, doesn't stand out. It's sort of, not really a very high quality, but can you make them something? Can you take something that is on that level?
Probably. You'd have to research and find out how many people want to turn their CAC. I think what's CAC in Dutch? I won't say it. And she probably is from South Africa, so it's probably Afrikaans. But I know what CAC is. So there probably could be. You'd want to investigate it and research it and do a bit of analysis using that sheet that I showed you early on. You want to kind of find out. Yeah, exactly. I knew it was Clara. CAC is shit, she said. Yeah. So that's from the Dutch word, and then it's
Horrible, ugly.
horrible, ugly. Yeah, but the literal translation in Afrikaans and probably in Dutch is So I'd say turning retrofitting homes into super homes or some form of that would be a good niche. Could be a good niche, definitely.
Yeah. Post questions. Richard and I are available for the next 5 minutes or a little bit. So, what questions do you have about niche selection? What challenges have you had when you've been thinking about? Well, it's a challenge to figure it out.
So while people are doing that, I'm just going to run through just to give you the big picture here. When you're selecting a niche is certainly part of the process. But if you're thinking about creating a proper marketing system, first thing you want, I'll just run you through so you can see where this fits in the whole big picture. But first thing I get people to do is focus on what you want out of life and out of your business, right? Because what we do is then we reverse engineer back, let's say, your business. What sort of life do you want? And then we say, all right, well, for that sort of life, you're going to have this type of business. And if you're going to have that type of business, therefore, you can't just be picking up any projects that come in the door, right? You're going to have to specialize in, you're going to have to at least have some specialist areas within your business which are highly profitable, right, for you, and you can charge high fees, right? And that's why we go through this process of choosing particular type of project types before they choose you. Because if you just get anything that comes in the door, you're going to get anything that comes in the door. And most projects are rats and mice. Once you've picked your niche, then the next step is, okay, well, how are we going to make you the most valuable person or firm for that particular niche? Then we're going to need to attract them. We're going to need to attract people. Now, it's much easier once you've, if you're a specialist for oncology medical units, it's much easier to then work out how you're going to be valuable and how, you're going to be a thought leader in that particular area. Everything in your marketing system becomes much easier when you've nailed it down to a particular niche. I can talk about all sorts of things if I'm specializing in oncology medical centers. I can talk about the mistakes that people make when building them. I can talk about the cost of building them. I can talk about the process for building an oncology unit. I can talk about some hot topic within oncology units. Let's say some problem that they're facing because, the way you treat people has changed. And I can talk about how that can be overcome by designing the oncology unit in a different way. All of a sudden, I can write stuff which is really useful and valuable to these people. Okay. Next step, once they're following your thought leadership, you meet, you offer meetings to meet them. You can offer special diagnostic sessions to review let's say their oncology plans and what their objectives are. You could offer, you can offer paid diagnosis sessions to go and review that with them. You're going to be more referable. You need to set up referral systems. You need to set up promotional systems. And then anybody who kind of comes into your world, and you stay in touch with them. All right. So there's the big picture, but selecting them is a key part of it, because all these other steps, apart from step number one, I guess step number two follows on from step number one, but steps 3 to 9, really, you can't do them properly or in a really valuable way until you know exactly what you're aiming at. And that happens in step number 2, which we've talked about today. All right. So, if you want to, for those of you who are interested, and I might just chat in the chat window there, but if anyone wants to have a chat with us about this stuff, I'll just stick it in the, or maybe Eric, you can put it in the chat window there.
I'll do that. You want to just zoom in on that area so that it's easy to read.
That one there.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you feel you've got a niche, or you've got an idea about a niche, or you already have a niche, then you're in a good position to then have a chat and say, all right, well, I've kind of got a niche, but I don't really have anything else. So have a chat, and we'll, someone from our team will take you through all the steps. Okay. All right. Ross Can says, how do you deal with projects that come at you that don't fit the advertised niche, but which you would like to do? Good question. So Ross, how do you deal with them? So what specifically are you asking? Does it mean, do you turn them down, or do you, I mean, I don't think you have to turn them down. You can still do them if they're a good project and you want to do it. I'll just reiterate, what I'm not saying is, I'm not saying you have to specialize in a particular area and that's the only type of projects you do. I'm not saying you do that. You can, and it might be something you move to in the future if you want to be highly specialized and highly profitable, right? But what I'm saying, particularly at the start, is you will specialize your marketing. So while you may have a generalist, say you start with a generalist business, you would then set up a marketing system. And when I say a marketing system, I would say advertising that targets a particular area, messaging that calls yourself a specialist, follow-up that only relates to that particular area, thought leadership where you talk about that topic and only that topic, right? So that whole thing, I would group, an LCC, which is specifically designed for that topic. So all those things I would class as part of your marketing system for that niche. Now, if you want to have 3, so it's almost like catching fish. You need a specialist hook, specialist bait. You need to be in a specialist location. You need to be in you need to have maybe a special type of line, special type of fishing rod. That whole thing is your specialist marketing system for catching that type of fish. Now that's cool. If you want to catch a different type of fish, no problem. But you're going to need a different fishing rod. You're going to need a different, but they're going to need to be custom for that different type of fish. So it'll need a different type of hook. The fish might eat different bait. You're going to catch those fish in a different area. You'll need a different line, all that type of stuff. So if you get the idea, just think of catching fish. Okay. It doesn't mean you can't eat meat and you can't eat vegetables. It just means you've got a specialist fish catching system. Okay. As I say, it may get to a point where you like this fish so much that it's all you catch. That's fine. Or it might be just, no, I have a specialist, dream project catching system. There you go. So hopefully that answers that question. All right. So just remember, we'll wind this up in a minute, but if you want the report, there's a 3-part document. In fact, I'll show you what that looks like. You can get a copy of that. We will send that out to you. You just need to type special in the chat window, or wherever you are watching this thing here. It's a good document, actually. No, not that one. Nope, can't find it. Okay, we'll cancel that one. Yeah, type special into the chat window. We'll send you a document. If you're interested in getting the template, which I showed you earlier, then type template into the chat window. And if you're interested in having a chat to us, then type that link that Eric showed you in the chat window. All right.
Or if you don't have that link handy, or that's a little too hard right now, just type the word call or call me in the chat window. Call me and we will make arrangements for you. But there's a link to book a game plan call with a member of our team to help you figure out a game plan for how you can implement a whole marketing system that'll help you attract and win better clients and projects. Now, I did see there was a question earlier from, the name didn't come in StreamYard, but I did see it in Facebook, and I'll just get the name. Manuel Murgal, about gravitating to projects that contain an element of historic preservation and both high-end things like single townhome renovations costing as much as 10 million, and churches, which are always strapped for cash. These both seem mutually exclusive. So one answer to that is you can have more than one niche. You can certainly do both of those things. But when you create marketing materials and you talk to people about their project, you're going to talk about the one that matters to them. So if they are a high-end, person and want to do a, renovate and preserve single townhome and they have money, then you're talking to them about how to do that right. If they're a church, you're talking to them about something different. So essentially, it's like if you met someone at a party and they said, I hear you're an architect, I have a project. Tell me about your project. You would focus on that type of project. So in your marketing, you can be a specialist in more than one area, but that's better than being a generalist and say, well, we can do any type. We can do churches, we can do homes. You do these two specific ones. It could be even more than one, more than two if you have a larger firm, but certainly you just develop messages and a way of communicating your approach and your value and your expertise and your authority in a specific niche area, and that's going to make you stand out.
Okay, so Jennifer Wright asks, for those just beginning their practice, how would you define their niche with limited experience and little proof of concept? Yeah, good question, Jennifer. For those just beginning their practice, right? So let's say you don't have a lot of portfolio examples. One thing you can do, Jennifer, actually, if I go to this here, is while you may not have a large portfolio, that doesn't stop you from being a thought leader in a particular type of niche, right? So a thought leader, a thought leader is someone who, let's see what I've got here, has tools, they have educational material, they give commentary and opinions. You can review a whole lot of different projects that fit within that category. So while you may not be reviewing your work and you may not be talking about your work, you can still write about it and talk about it and give opinions about it. And if what you say is valuable, then you're going to attract people who fit in that niche, right? And because you're talking about it, presumably, if you're starting your own business, you have done a lot of other projects, right? So you do have experience, just not in your firm. So, you can write about projects. You might not be able to, maybe you've done a project in that particular niche for someone else, and you're thinking, well, I can't show the photos for it, right? Because they belong to the previous company. Now, sometimes the previous company will let you show a project that you worked on. Sometimes they're okay with that, but let's say they're not. What they can't stop you doing is talking about it and telling stories about your experience in building these and what you learned and the mistakes that were made. So that's how I would do it. It doesn't stop you getting appointments with these people. If they're reading what you say about this niche, if they're looking at stuff that you're reviewing, if they're reading your opinions, it's not a big jump for them to say, I want to have a chat with this lady about our project. Like, most people don't ring up and say, okay, I've read your stuff, I've watched your videos, I've heard what you've got to say, I've downloaded your template or your checklist. How many projects have you done? They don't ask that. They're too keen to talk about the project that they want done. All right. So kind of how I'd cover that one there. Obviously, if you had, 10 projects on that particular area, I'd be highlighting that. But you use what you got, Jennifer. You've got stories, you've got experience. You might not have a portfolio for your current business, but you've got stuff, right? All right. Duncan Sinclair. All right. I'll see you again. How are you? Elaine Lamb. Okay. There we go. Clara says, Richard ought to have electrical blue frame glasses. Why is that? Would I look more like an architect then? These are my kind of oh no, yes they are. They're my sort of thick black rimmed glasses.
Some people have said that you remind them of Le Corbusier.
Yeah. There we go.
So just a reminder, type in the word template if you want to get that template document. Type in the word special if you want to get the materials on how to be special that Richard has written some great articles on that. Then call me, put down call me if you'd like us to arrange a call, where you can go to archmarketing.org/riches in niches. Riches dash, that's a hyphen IN and then dash NICHES. It is on screen. So Richard, great presentation. We wanted to keep this to a relatively short, half an hour type of frame. So we've done about 15 minutes of Q&A. Any final comments or encouragement for people who've joined us today or who are watching the replay recording?
Yeah, sure. I think my final comment is, look, Eric's worked with architects for, 20 years or something. I've worked with them
30 years, yeah.
I've worked with them for the last 10 years. And what I've noticed is that architects are underpaid and undervalued, right? And so if you're going to be the average architect, you're going to earn a reasonably modest income. You're not going to get rich. You're going to work harder than you probably should. And you're going to be relatively underpaid, right? And so I would be looking for ways to break out of that. You can't, I don't think anyone can afford to be an average architect. You've got to find a way to make yourself special. One of the ways to make yourself special, this is by no means the only way, but one of the ways is to, find some niche, become the specialist in that niche. And becoming the specialist doesn't mean you need the most projects, right? It doesn't mean you need to have done 30 years of experience in it. It means most people don't claim to be a specialist anyone. So if you find a niche, like some of the people have talked about, let's say it could be anything, but you pick your niche and let's say it's super homes or something, or ultra resilient off the grid homes. It's not, and you say I specialize in that type of thing. And what does being a specialist mean? It means I focus on it, right? There's no qualification to call yourself a specialist, but there's chances are that if you pick the right niche, no one else is really calling themselves a specialist in that niche. They do it, but they don't call themselves a specialist, and they don't go and produce thought leadership in that area. They don't go and talk about it. They don't provide other resources and content in it. It's not hard to be seen as the number one specialist in an area, even if you're not the most experienced, when you do these things that we talked about today, because no one else is doing it. The bad thing about being an architect is it's really hard to do marketing. The good thing about being an architect is most architects are really bad marketers, right? So it's very easy to communicate a higher level of value in a particular area than other architects when everybody else is so bad at it. Okay, so with some of these stuff that I summarized, really just a summary today at a very high level, or we only really summarized one step, right? Hopefully you can see that it's not hard to outdo other people who are just, calling themselves a generalist or just talking about everything they do and saying, look at everything I can do. Aren't I great? And they are great. But unfortunately, the market doesn't see you as great until they see you as a bit of a specialist. So that's my kind of final thought on that. Don't leave yourself as just another architect. Don't leave yourself as a generalist or seen as a generalist. Don't think you can't win better projects. You can. Like 99% of architects are terrible at marketing. It's not hard to outmarket them and win those better projects, but you're going to have to do it by communicating high value. All right.
So final comment from me, as Richard has made clear, there's a 9-step system here. This is just step 2, and it's not even all of step 2. It's just one angle, one way of selecting and choosing projects and establishing yourself in a special position. But the 9-step system is something that we use all the time with architects and interior designers, building designers, and it can help you break out of the rut, increase your fees, work with higher quality clients, the ones that you really want to and enjoy working with, and ultimately get to Sunshine Island, which is that place you can see behind my window here, my virtual window, where you get paid well, working with great clients and projects that you enjoy. And that's what we wish for you. So if you'd like to talk to us about that, book a call. Just write down call me in the chat there, or go to archmarketing.org/riches in niches. So RICHES-IN-NICHES. All right. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Richard. Great presentation. We're going to take off. And we will be back with more, because these live streams, we've just realized, are going to be a great way to just give you value, be in front of all of you from time to time. So stay tuned, sign up for our email list, and we'll let you know when we're on the next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.